Hi, it's Chanel. Welcome to another episode of Chanel's Informed Mind Chatter. This week we'll be discussing navigating schools in the COVID-19 environment. So with the start and spread of COVID-19 in the community, schools have made the difficult decision to transition from what they traditionally do to some sort of hybrid or different approach. In March, schools began to transition to online learning with the hopes that with the new school year, the pandemic would be behind us. And we all know, unfortunately, that has not happened. Since June or July, there's been a ton of discussions around how kids should go to school. Should it be face-to-face, online, or a happy medium of hybrid? In fact, the biggest battle has been face-to-face versus remote learning, with parents on both sides feeling strongly for one side versus the other. So today, my focus will be to discuss the pros and cons of each option, give you the data and strategies to support those decisions, and help you make the best decision for moving forward. So now we'll start with face-to-face and the pros and cons of that particular option. So the first pro is that it supports social and emotional growth. So what does that mean? It means that it supports them developing and maintaining friendships. So if they're face-to-face, then they're able to interact with friends and learn how to develop friendships. They learn how to behave in groups, and they know how to interact and form relationships with people outside of their families. Also, students are able to access support systems, such as various mental health and behavioral systems that are needed face-to-face. The next pro is that children with physical and mental disabilities, as well as learning disabilities, are able to receive the services afforded to them through their IEP. Another pro is that it offers a safe environment, particularly for those students that are in abusive households. And then finally, it addresses nutritional needs of the student. So the biggest con, of course, as you all know, is that it increases the likelihood of COVID-19 because they're interacting with people outside of their small bubble, small circle. They're interacting with the students, with teachers, with staff, and other people that they don't normally interact with. It also increases the likelihood of spread to their family should the student become infected, especially if they're asymptomatic. And finally, another con is that the implementation of mandatory mitigation strategies and adherence and compliance with those strategies may be difficult to implement or may be difficult to maintain. So some students may wear their mask incorrectly, some students may not wear their mask, or you may have adults that are pushing that these strategies do not exist. So those are the pros and cons of being face-to-face. There's also research that supports face-to-face learning as well. According to a research compilation article on NPR that examined the links between schools and COVID cases, COVID-19 transmission among children in schools may actually be low. International studies that have assessed how readily COVID-19 spreads in schools also reveal low rates of transmission when community transmission is low. Based on current data, the rate of infection among younger children and from students to teachers has also been low, especially if proper precautions are followed, like I talked about earlier, like the mitigation strategies like mask wearing for all. There have also been few reports of children being the primary source of COVID-19 transmission among family members. This is consistent with data from both virus and antibody testing, suggesting that children are not the primary drivers of COVID-19 spread in schools or in the community. The next learning style we'll discuss is remote learning and the pros and cons of that particular option. So the first pro and the obvious one is that it decreases the likelihood of exposure to COVID-19. So you're doing all your learning from home. You're only exposed to your family members as opposed to students, staff, and teachers in the school. So that's why it decreases the likelihood of exposure to COVID-19 beyond your core group. The next pro is that it's easier to provide more specialized learning through technology and supporting apps. The next pro is that it's convenient for parents and students. So there's no fighting to make lunches, to get kids out the door, to really be on time for things. It's just about waking them up, getting them dressed, getting them fed, and getting them on the computer. So it's actually less time getting ready. So it's more convenient for both parents and students with that particular option. And then finally, safety and security issues are minimized. So there's less bullying and accidents, and there's less physical bullying and less accidents to occur because they're in the home as opposed to being in school. So now that we've discussed the pros of remote learning, we'll now discuss the cons. So the first con is that it lessens student engagement. So that means there's less time for collaboration and less time for interactive learning via small groups. There's also Wi-Fi and connectivity issues. So the speed of the Wi-Fi in the home may not be enough to be able to access the applications that the teachers are wanting the students to use, or the platform that they're using may be crashing. There just may be a number of Wi-Fi and connectivity issues that prevent the student from using the online platform. Also, another con is that there's lack of access to the tools or lack of appropriate tools needed to participate in remote learning. So in addition to the Wi-Fi issue, there may be no laptop in the home or tablet, no printer. There also may be a lack of sufficient equipment. So even though they don't have the laptop or printer, they may be using a cell phone to do their work on the online platform, which is not sufficient to be able to do all their work. Also, there's an increase in screen time. So the World Health Organization and the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends 1 to 1.5 hours a day of screen time for elementary age children and up to 2 hours for middle school age children. Another con of remote learning is the decrease in social emotional growth. So the students are no longer face-to-face with their peers. They're no longer face-to-face with other adults outside of the home. So as a result, it decreases their social emotional growth. Also, this learning style is difficult for some with special needs or learning difficulties. And that's actually a huge con for remote learning for this particular population. And finally, another con is that there are some nutritional concerns. So there are students that receive most of their nutrition through school, so at least breakfast and lunch, and that's no longer being provided because they're participating in remote learning. The final option is hybrid learning. And hybrid learning, I call this the happy medium because the pros and cons would be similar to face-to-face, but it actually strikes a delicate balance of face-to-face and remote and allows for smaller classroom sizes so that as a result, the kids are better able to social distance. So to help with your decision making, CDC actually developed a really cool tool that's designed to help parents, caregivers, and guardians weigh the risk and benefits of the available educational options and helps you make the best decision about sending your child back to school. I've actually included the link in my description, so I encourage you to check that out if you're trying to make the best decision possible for your child. So I'm coming back to face-to-face because I want you to consider I want you to look at other considerations for that particular option and kind of the things that I've used to weigh the benefit of that particular option. So the most important things to be aware of with face-to-face is knowing the data, being knowledgeable of the mitigation strategies the school that your child attends will employ, and then knowing the risk of infection should you decide to send your child for face-to-face learning. This means asking lots of questions and doing your research. So now I'm going to share a personal story about how I came to make the decision for my children as regards to their learning. So my oldest child, his school is actually still continuing to do virtual, but I was involved in just trying to find out what their plans were for should they decide to go face-to-face. So talking to the principal about what mitigation strategies were currently in place, what they were planning to employ, and then sharing resources with them so that they were better informed. With their second quarter, they're actually still continuing to go virtual, and they're planning for their next semester, so next year, and what they plan to do moving forward. For my youngest child, as I shared in the previous episode, he has learning disabilities and he's special needs. And so his situation was a little different. And so what we did was we looked at the data. We talked to the principal. We talked to the teacher about classroom size, about the ability to social distance, about mask wearing, just a number of different mitigation strategies to make sure those were put in place in the classroom. His classroom size is also small. So there are approximately 8 kids with 3 teachers, which makes it easier to social distance. In addition to that, they're cohorting. So the kids are together all the time. So their risk of contracting COVID they're on the continuum, as we talked about before. It would be a smaller risk or lesser risk because of the mitigation strategies that are in place in the classroom. So the purpose of this episode was to help you as a parent make the informed decision about what's best for you and your family. So as we talked about, knowing the data is important, knowing what mitigation strategies that the school will employ, having those conversations with school staff, the principal, the board if you need to, and just being able to be informed about what is best and what mitigation strategies are employed in the school. Also, you should know the risk of whatever option you choose with sending your child either remote or face-to-face or hybrid. Just know the risk. And finally, just be informed. Don't forget to leave your comments and questions below so that we can continue this conversation. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. Finally, you'll find a number of valuable resources that can help you make the informed decision to send your child back to school or to decide on remote. Thanks and have a great day. Bye. See you soon.